Awesome.
All right, 3, 2, 1. We are recording. Hello and welcome to the Gonzo Experience. I am David Gonzo Mamata, bringing you another vivacious, exciting episode of the Gonzo Experience podcast every Wednesday morning. Make sure to tune in, subscribe, like us, all that good stuff to make sure that you get every episode delivered fresh to your smartphone. So today I have on a show this really great guy that we have connected through a mutual friend. Thank you, Nunzio Di Gregorio, my college buddy, otherwise known as Bobo. And that was his fraternity name, and my fraternity name was Gonzo, as you probably imagine. But thank you, Bobo, for the recommendation. So I have on the show today a great guy that is an instant friend, Ben Hart. Ben, welcome to the show.
Man, thank you so much, Gonzo. I appreciate this, and yes, big shout out to Nunzio for the introduction. I'm super appreciative. So thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, no. Nunzio has introduced me to a lot of people. Now, little side note about Nunzio. It's kind of a funny story here. So when I pledged, he was already a brother, and for the whole pledging time, whenever we saw a brother, we would have to go up to that brother and do this official welcome with his full name. So his full name, every time I saw Nunzio, I'd have to, and I couldn't call him Bobo yet because I wasn't a brother. So I'd have to say, "Good afternoon, Nunzio Antonio Giuseppe Di Gregorio, sir." That literally is his full Italian name, right? So and I still remember it today. But then I finally got to shorten it to Bobo.
So everybody had to do that when they saw the other.
Yeah. So when you're pledging the fraternity, every time you saw a brother, you had to say their full name. So Nunzio Antonio Giuseppe Di Gregorio, nice Irish boy.
Hilarious.
So enough about Nunzio. We all love him. So Ben, let's talk about you. So Ben, you are a young guy. You are already a great entrepreneur. You've had some success already, and I'm sure there's more to come. You've written a book, which we're going to talk about. Listeners, viewers, if you're watching this on the Gonzo YouTube channel, I'm holding it up. It's called The Zero Mindset. Really slick looking book, hardcover, the whole works. And we're going to talk about that as well. But Ben, give us the journey. You have a pretty cool, interesting story so far. And like I said, I'm sure there's more to come. But share the journey so far, any highs and lows, some learning lessons along the way. And then I want to get into some of the lessons from the book called The Zero Mindset.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I'll kind of dip into because I think it kind of made way for how I grew up into the book. So I grew up in Poughkeepsie, which I think I might have mentioned to you. And I went to predominantly. I was the minority. I was kind of the white boy in a very African American school. So that was an experience that definitely shaped my mindset around development and growing up in that aspect. And then I went to Manhattan College, which is in the Bronx. And I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I really didn't. So let's just go the psych route because I was into psychology. And I figured, let me go after bio as well, because I wanted to make the most out of my degree, even though I didn't really have any intention of doing anything with biology. But during that moment, I was also competing in boxing. So that was a huge passion of mine. I started to evolve an instant passion for boxing, and I competed out of Washington Heights. And, I was kind of balancing out what I was interested in. I really didn't know. I would dedicate a lot of time to boxing, and school really, I wouldn't say I was the best student. So once graduation hit, I was like, well, what am I going to do? A couple of months away from graduation. So, me and my friend were working on this business plan for a renewable energy gym, and, young, naive, all the other things that go along with thinking big about what you would like to do with your life. And, we had this full out business plan. And then, we flew out to Silicon Valley and crashed a couple of meetings around energy specifically. And we got a huge reality check, and everybody was just basically like, well, we had printed out business cards. So they was called Power Gym. And we had these, obviously they were fake, but, decent design on them. And we would pass them out as if this was something that we actually had going on. But we were so young, it was just almost completely unbelievable for anybody else to actually believe it. And then a reality check, I think we met with this angel investor, or he was there at the moment. And he was like, I think you need some like real world experience inside the gym and understanding how the gym works first. So I took that as great. I just need like 3 or 4 months. Maybe I'll go back and home and work at a gym. And, because I've been part of gyms my whole life. And so that was a big part of it. I said, all right, great. I'll go back home and I'll work this through. So I went to an Equinox in the Upper West Side, and I wanted to be a front desk. I just wanted to be at the front desk for the summer. And they convinced me to ultimately become a trainer. And then long story short, I did after a couple of tries. And I did that for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. And during that time, I put the whole power gym thing on hold for obvious reasons. But during that time, I met a lot of amazing people, and I ended up starting a company called Kinetic that was a streaming fitness company. So we ended up streaming fitness classes that you could take anything from bar to yoga to strength training to HIIT. And we had our own studio. We got funding. We did that for about 6-7 years. And then we merged with a media company in 2018. And from that point, that was like, it was like giving birth to something, having it be a part of your identity, having so much drive and passion. And then it's kind of felt like it was kind of taken away, regardless if it was voluntarily or not. It was still, it's like what you so much of your identity was wrapped into it for myself. And I was like, oh my God, like I really didn't understand how much of my identity was in this. And I was like, what do I do? And one of those moments, which I acknowledge in the book, was like a point of zero for me. My identity was almost felt like it was stripped, and I had to redefine who I was, what I believed in, what I wanted to do, and what I stood for. And and I didn't see myself being in fitness my whole life in that capacity. So I started to do things I was passionate about. I hosted a podcast show called Off the Grit. Down with people, we talked something consulting individuals. You still there?
Hey, Ben, I'm sorry.
Individuals, and then sure.
Hey, Ben, I'm sorry to cut you off. Might be my wireless or your wireless, but I just had an interruption. So just start again from when you said that you had a podcast.
Yeah. So I had a podcast show called Off the Grit, where I sat down with people who I thought were inspiring and successful in their own right, and we talked about their gritty process as opposed to their highlight process. We talked about the things that they might not really want to discuss. Whereas, somebody may say, oh, I had to go through depression, or I was broke, or, I was addicted to X, or whatever it was. And those would really open up the ideas of people coming in, trying to start something or wanting to do something with their career. Whereas like, oh, I don't have to be perfect to do this. And, wow, even like the people that I've seen to be successful have to go through all this. So it doesn't really put that much pressure on me. And that was really the idea of it. And then along the way, I started speaking at colleges. And then once the pandemic hit, I was like, well, what am I do want to package the ideas that I have from speaking at colleges and my experience interactions with students. And so I wrote The Zero Mindset. And now here we are. Sorry for the long wind.
No, I'd love to hear the story. That's great. Are you still doing your podcast Off the Grit, or is that on hold?
Actually, I'm going to continue it. Yeah, I'm going to pick it back up next month.
I love the name. It's a great idea. Off the Grit, not grid, folks. Off the Grit. I like it very much.
Yes.
Very cool. I'd be excited to listen to that. If you need any good guests, let me know. I know a few people that would be amazing. Great guests for you that have been on my podcast as well. So amazing.
Yeah, I listened to a couple, but the last episode, I think Gina
Poloni. Gina Poloni. Yeah.
Yeah, her story was interesting too, and I appreciated her energy in that. And specifically, she came from Equinox as well, which was interesting. So I was like, well, I can kind of relate to that.
Oh, very cool. Well, listen to last week's. It was Jesse Cole from the Savannah Bananas baseball team, and it's
wow.
He's more of an entertainer than owner of a baseball team. So great story about more of a show than a baseball game. So, but anyway,
wow.
Let's talk about you. So the Zero Mindset. Once again, I'm going to hold it up. I'm obviously I'm stating the obvious, but it's on Amazon, all that good stuff to go get it. Right. So when did it come out?
Came out September 3rd of 2021.
Okay. So not even a year. And
right.
So tell us the whole. I mean, I love the name. It definitely is. It's makes you do a double take. Like what's that about? And So tell us about this, the book, the strategies. And, as we talked about, I love when the Gonzo family can take away some great nuggets and be like, oh my God, that's awesome. I can implement it in my life or business, like right now.
Yeah. And I think that, when I wrote the Zero Mindset, it was really about stripping a lot of the things you believe to be true down to zero, and not everything, obviously, but, I think I relate to parts of zeros in people's lives. And I think that at some point, most people go through that, whether they're redefining their career, whether they're trying to start something from zero again, maybe they're just getting out of college, maybe they just got fired from the job. There's so many realms of zero, which is kind of off the grip, prepared me to kind of discuss and talk about once I started hearing real life examples. And specifically, when I was talking with college students, when I would go to colleges, I've spoken at Manhattan, Pace, NYU, and a couple around the metro area. And I would used to talk about business strategy stuff. And I thought this is helpful. And then I would get conversations or questions or just conversations right after the talk that made me double think what I was talking about, because most of the stuff that I was talking about were basically strategies that can be implemented, but what their concerns really weren't about a lack of strategy or a lack of information, but it was almost their mindset around how their life had been planned out or panned out for them, or what they saw as failure, what was too risky for them. They were afraid of what their parents might think of them if they make a decision. They were all very personal responses that did not come from a lack of information. So that was where I started to think wow, I'm talking about business strategy here. I'm like things, you can do once you actually get there. And then I was like, well, never mind that. Like the mindset part before that needs to be acknowledged. And so there's a part in this book where, it's two-pronged. There's two prongs in the book. One is mindset strategy and the other is business strategy. And I discuss them as in direction and speed. So the mindset strategy part is really just a defining moment of the things that define you, what you're passionate about, what you're really good at from a self-awareness perspective, and all factors that kind of establish a direction for yourself. Because at zero, that is a very important part to play and part to acknowledge and to think through, not just to go with a business strategy. And I think that's where I used to get it a little bit wrong. I used to go for business strategy, but in reality, there's this defining moment of direction before you can drive the car anywhere. There's that saying where you can drive as fast as you want west and you'll never catch the sunrise. And it was kind of like that drove me to really distinctly put the two in separate places, and even putting one before the other in some capacity. So that's the kind of way the book went down. And so just to reiterate, in that framework, there are some social rules that I feel like are necessary to distinctly even break down, when it comes to, our identities of, our ideas of failure, or our ideas of risk taking, our ideas of how influenced we are in our day-to-day. So these things I put as zero principles in the book. So they're really just principles that kind of address a mindset from starting from zero.
Interesting. So tell us a little bit more, so we're going to read the book. And then after we read the book, how are we going to reemerge differently and more successful? Because a lot of entrepreneurs, to your point, do experience failure, and it is about the mindset of that failure, right? And my book, as Crash and Learn, it's about rising, using that as an experience, a lesson to say wow, well, I'm down but not out. I'm Rocky that just got punched out by the Russian guy, but I'm coming back strong, right? And but he almost had to get to a zero mindset, before that happened, right? So tell us, some strategies about how, we could reemerge from a zero mindset to be stronger, better, faster, all that good stuff.
For sure. And that's where I came to the conclusion that it's much more about the mindset than the information that's given to you at any given moment. So when I say that, it's really the thing that I've found that works the most is, I think that I have this big part at the beginning of the book that talks about personal accountability. And I think that the more we can face that, and the more truth that we can acknowledge within what we did wrong. And though we're not responsible for everything that comes into our life, we are more responsible for how we act after those things come into our life and how much those things affect us. So I think that regardless of what place of zero, I think there's a place where you can get to that, acknowledging the truths of what happened so that there is no delusion to move forward on. Because I think that once you start moving in a delusional space, things get cloudy, things get unclear, and you might be moving in not the strongest direction. I think the strongest direction is acknowledging the truths and becoming most self-aware, which I think that's a part of the mindset factor before even moving forward. So I do emphasize a lot of the book on the development of a mindset, which involves the personal accountability and establishing of the direction.
Yeah, very cool. Now, so you talk about in the book about breaking some rules, right? And can you share some of those rules that you encourage us to break?
Sure. Yeah. And I think that, so I have these 10-0 principles, and I think within them, no, they're not all, rules. I do distinguish the kind of difference between laws and rules in the book, but they're not all rules. But at the same time, some of them kind of break a lot of the social rules and norms that have been passed down from generation to generation. I believe that we are playing in a very different landscape, in a much more privileged landscape than our grandparents have been playing in. So I think that because of that, we need to understand, this moment of privilege and have some gratitude for the amount of instant access and ability that you have to actually start from zero. Like, first off, the idea of zero starting is almost in some sense a privilege in today's society. So I do put that in play. But yeah, I think that, there's a number of them, but if I can give you a few, I think that the idea of risk taking is a big one. I think the things that have been passed down as things get a little too risky over time, but right now we are in a place where, everything is almost considered a risk, and real risk is something that might be going on in another country that you don't necessarily understand quite. You have things at your fingertips, and the ability to even have this conversation. The risks are pretty minimal if you really think through what the real risks are of you trying something new, and starting again at any point. Another one is, I think that the idea of working hard, like really hard working, and I think that the context it's used in today is a little misleading. So I do say that that's one of them. I think that the idea of just working hard. And I think that when you're in a place of starting from zero, I don't think that is a solution. So I come up with, and I say, well, working consistently is a little bit better than working hard, because I think that the idea of working hard can lead to overworking. It could lead to exhaustion, and it could lead to almost an uninspired mindset. And so I emphasize working consistently, and I relate it to, if you were to go to the gym and let's say you've never worked out a day in your life, you wouldn't say go in there and max out on your first day. That would be a bad idea, because at the end of the day, your energy is finite. You don't have unlimited amount of energy, and you need recovery so that you can actually last throughout the week. So if you go in day one and you do 10 reps and you can't do another one, you're probably going to need to recover Tuesday and Wednesday. So if you took the same person, you said, well, let's just do 5 reps every single day, the amount of reps throughout the year and the amount of days of consistency that person has gotten in over the person that has did 10, has to rest another day or two, do another 10, rest another day or two, is overwhelmingly in their favor, the person who's done 5 every day consistently. So I would just say that, don't overwork or work. I think the word working hard has gotten to a place where it's a little about overworking. So I break it down into more consistency.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just to expand on 2 of the things you just said, and
sure.
The first thing about, working hard. Yeah, it's how you define working hard. And it
Sure.
could be, if you make 10 new sales calls a day consistently, now it's not like massively hard work to make 10 new sales calls, right? Like my grandfather from Italy was digging ditches every day, all day, right? Making roads, sewers. That was freaking hard work. For you to consistently make 10 new sales calls a day, keeping it in perspective, not really hard work, right? But being consistent, you're going to see like massive results from that, right? So I agree with you. And then going back to what you just said, about appreciating, really appreciating about who we are and where we are. That I think that we take a lot of stuff for granted. So, for instance, just talking about wearing masks, right? Like I just want to be clear. Like I hate wearing a mask. It's no fun for me. I don't enjoy it at all. That being said, did I, have to storm the beaches at Normandy? Right. So, right. So keep it in perspective. Right. And that's the whole idea.
For sure.
Right. Is keeping in perspective. Like we are blessed. We have a lot of incredible opportunities where we are and in the time that where we are. So so just keeping that all in perspective as we say, okay, let's keep that mindset and grow to the next level, with gratitude and with appreciation. So
for sure. And I think that's a huge part of establishing like any mindset to move forward on. It's like you have to have this realm of gratitude, which can at the same time eliminate some fears you might have. Just being grateful that you don't have to do that work that has been built up to get you to the place you're at right now. So I totally agree.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Totally.
So Ben, tell me, like, just tell me. So there is an entrepreneur, I'm just making this up, that has crashed and they're feeling like a loser. Maybe they're in debt. Maybe they were successful and they had the world by the what's, feeling great, Midas touch, all that stuff. Then they crashed and they're trying to rebuild, but they are they're just down. They feel down and out, and there's no hope in their mind. What are you going to tell them to do to get back on track besides read your book, step one? But what would be the next things?
I love that. Honestly, if I'm being honest with you, like this is kind of one of the reasons why I wrote the book, but I would say to not run away from that zero. And I would say to accept the basic truths that come along with it and develop a deeper understanding of what went wrong, who you are, what you like, what you're good at the same time. And I think there's a redefining moment that could take place. Humbly speaking, I think I would suggest that, because that type of clarity is needed, I believe, to move forward more effectively, should I say. So I part of this reason with this is because when I was talking to college kids, they would have this, but in a different way. It wasn't like they just started a company and they crashed and burned. It was like, they're getting out of college. They have no idea. Their parents have been pushing to do electrical engineering. They hate electrical engineering. They really want to do this. And that, there's a part of that you might have to acknowledge some really difficult truths that you might not have been trained to acknowledge. And so I think that the ability to be honest with yourself first, before any kind of real business strategy comes in, or like what you'd like to do step by step, I think that there's some self-awareness strategy that should happen in defining the direction and understanding it as clear as you can before moving forward. And I hate to be so basic and generic, but I think that's what I think is most important.
Awesome. Ben, this has been fantastic. Ben Hart, Zero Mindset. Ben, where are we going to find you? Listeners want to reach out to you. Where are we going to connect with you?
Yeah, much respect. Well, I spend a lot of time on Instagram. So I'm at Benny Inc., BENNYINC.
Okay.
And if anybody actually wants to reach me at all, BennyHartInc.com.
Okay.
That's the website. So I spend a lot of time on Instagram. I do the others as well. But
yeah.
I
all right.
Probably spend more time.
All right. And as always, Gonzo family, if you want a personal connection, throw me an email at david@davidmamano.com. And I will connect you to Ben. Ben, thanks again for sharing some heartbeats with us today. Very, very much appreciate it.
Of course.
Congratulations on your success. Like I said, I don't know your age, but I'm looking at you. You look pretty darn young. So I know you got a lot of great things ahead of you as well. And you've done some great things already. So congratulations.
Thank you. I'm young, but I'm not as youthful as you internally. You got it all. So you got it all.
Well, I have an under 12-year-old for sure, and we'll say you're an old soul. So we'll meet in the middle. There we go.
I love it. I love it. Well, listen, I want to say before I really do appreciate you bringing me on and chatting through some stuff. I know we had a conversation before this, and I appreciate your journey, and I would love to bring you on when I restart mine. I think it's
absolutely.
Amazing.
Thanks, Ben. Really appreciate it.
Love it.
Also want to thank the Gonzo family for tuning in. Appreciate you. As always, make sure to like us and rate us and all that good stuff. Share us. We want to spread the good Gonzo word to as many people as we can. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate you. Every Wednesday morning, a new episode. Make sure to have a great day and stay awesome.